Hello everybody and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle and to my next episode of New Album Spotlight. This is where I put the spotlight on a new album that's come out in the progressive rock scene that I recommend to you guys. I give a brief description about it and let you guys decide for yourselves if this is something you're interested in checking out. So today I have an album called Overlords by the band We Came From Space. So a bit more of an obscure pick, perhaps, but if you're a fan of Neil Morse band, you'll be happy to know that this band features Bill Hubauer, who's a fabulous keyboardist and singer for the Neil Morse band, really all over this album as well. You can hear a lot of that shared DNA with Neil Morse band and the sound that they often convey as well. But I feel like this project is more in the power pop vein of that sound. A bit of progressive rock influences, but more into that pomp rock, art rock style of the 70s, similar to bands like ELO, Queen, and Styx. Maybe a bit of Kansas as well into that mix, which of course Neil Morse band dabbles in also, but I feel like Neil Morse band has more of those bigger symphonic prog sections inspired by the likes of Yes and Genesis and Jethro Tull. Well, this is a bit more into the lane of the more 70s art rock scene and some of that power pop style that Bill Hubauer can often bring into the Neil Morse band with stuff like The Ways of a Fool and some of the single side stuff on the latest Innocence in Danger. So really like this album quite a bit. Features, like I said, Bill Hubauer on keyboards and vocals. We've got Dave Buzzard on guitars and vocals. We've got drummer Tim Malone also playing on this record, and Dave Hawk on bass and lead vocals also. So part of the fun of this is there's several different lead vocalists who each have different features throughout the album. So you hear a lot of Bill Hubauer and his vocals, but there's also vocals from the other members balancing that out. And I like that the band doesn't really take itself too seriously. It's more of a fun project, and the songs really reflect that. It's just a fun time with a lot of interesting poppier sounds that harken back to the 70s style, but with enough room to expand, to jam out, and to have these more expansive proggy sections also in the midst of it all. So it's really fun. To me, it's a big leap forward from their previous album, which was called While You Were Away, which was also really fun, and I recommend pulling that one out also from 2018. But I think this even puts the band forward in their abilities and really is an even better project and album that really caught my ear. Overlords, the opening title track, almost starts in a dark cinematic vibe before we get some Pink Floyd atmospheric type feel in the keyboards before landing into a very Beatles-esque power pop type vein. It reminded me almost of Ben Folds with some great piano rock style feel with some poppier melodies. Like I said, tongue-in-cheek a little bit as they say, I'll play some happy chords for the robot overlords. Just a really funny line and a really funny concept. There's some really cool guitar playing, some great vocal interplay and harmonies. I really like how they do their vocal harmonies and blends. I think that provides a really great sound for them, and I love their proggy section that comes about in this track. Has a really cool bass groove and some quirky guitar lines that evolves into like a classic jam band style moment. On the radio, starts out as an old-timey style radio broadcast before we get into a more classic rock feel. This is more of a catchy type single with a good groove. Could have been like a 2 to 3 minute pop song, but they expand it once again with some instrumental stuff that adds more of a proggy flair. There's even a brief section that almost reminds me of Emerson, Lake and Palmer's Hoedown with some really cool Keith Emerson-like keyboard moments. And I like the jazzy keys toward the end. It lays back into maybe a more jammy vibe towards the end of the track. Empty Space is one of my favorites. Once again, more of a single type track, but it really leans into this 70s groovy style, almost akin to like a Steely Dan, especially in the guitar licks, that jazzy guitar styling. I really love the keys, and I love the chorus melody. Bill Hubauer gets a spotlight on a great bridge. I just love this feel. I love Steely Dan. I love this kind of throwbacky 70s style, jazz pop style. I really think it's a fun feel and provides a cool spotlight on the album. Moving into She's the Bomb / Atomic Blues, which is like a 10-minute excursion. It starts once again with very bouncy 70s pop feel, cool catchy chorus, and more of a single vibe. And then halfway through, it morphs into this more extended instrumental section with some cool solo bass lines, some skittering drums, jazzy keys, cool jamming with keyboard soloing, great instrumental stuff, all kinds of cool proggy keyboard soloing over the top of some really cool groovy sections. I really thought this was fantastic, a really fun, expanded piece. Reputation is more of a standard rock and roll song, almost like a 50s, 60s style rock and roll. Not really my typical style, or not really my favorite part of the album, but it's still a fun track to listen to and has that fun rock and roll vibe to it. But then we get into the final trilogy of tracks, which feel very inspired by Bill Hubauer, who takes a bit of a lead throughout these tracks. Silent Letters is a piano ballad led by electric keys and bluesy guitar licks and Bill Hubauer's vocals. Feels like classic Hubauer from the Neil Morse Band contributions, and if you're familiar with his previous 10.10 band, really great layers of vocal harmonies, also a Beatles type vibe. Almost we get this Jellyfish type power pop feel to it. Really a cool track, really excellent. This leads into Facade, which is a really cool power pop tune with a slight maybe 80s aesthetic to it, really anthemic with a great soaring chorus. Love the section that just focuses on the keyboards and Bill's vocals. Just a really uplifting, beautiful song, and even has an instrumental section that sounds like it came straight from a Styx song, especially in the keyboard sounds that they use. And then that ends with a 9-minute mini epic, Seize the Day, which is a really cool track with a great opening keyboard salvo that's really fun to listen to. Great vocals from Bill, some jazzy keyboards later in the soloing section, and everything you'd want from a rousing proggy finale for the album. They actually released these last two tracks as part of an EP called Reasons in the Rhyme not too long ago, a couple years ago. So those are tracks that I'd heard before, but are really brought to life here as a great conclusion to this epic, cool album. So really, that's the main stuff I wanted to talk about with it. It's just a fun, cool, classic rock, art rock style album that really harkens back to that 70s feel. Bands like ELO and Queen and Styx and Kansas and what they were doing, blending this more classic rock feel with a bit more of some jammier extended sections to really bring some prog influences and a proggy aesthetic to the pieces on board. So really fun listen. Recommend if you are like me and like those types of influences, especially power pop style that harkens back to classic Beatles and Beach Boys era stuff, but also the more modern take on it like Jellyfish does and XTC and bands of that nature. So it really has all those influences baked in. And if you just like Bill Hubauer's contributions to the Neil Morse Band, I think this is pretty much a no-brainer. So that's what I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this review and that you go check out Overlords. It's out now, out on streaming and available for purchase on CD as well. It's been out it's been out a few weeks, so it's a really newish album, but one I heartily recommend to everybody who loves the similar style prog that I like, similar to Neil Morse Band and Flower Kings and the more brighter, fun, poppier side of the prog spectrum. So thank you guys so much for joining me, and I hope you guys are having a great time out there and are continuing to enjoy the music. Bye, everybody.